the title is Exploring the Diversity of Conceptualizations of Nature in East and in Southeast Asia. So this particular project was I think this is the pioneering project of the network, with the aim to at least a discussion on the concept of nature in the East and in Southeast Asia, because normally when we talk of nature, the concept that is initially or usually talked about is what the paper or what the network refers to as the narrow understanding of nature, which we'll show in a while. The idea here is to have an understanding of how cultures and societies in East and Southeast Asia view and conceptualize the concept of nature, as opposed to the more Western conceptualization of the concept. This is also in response to various discussions or statements in existing Western literature, wherein the idea is that humanity is waging war against nature, or that we are losing this war against nature. It's as if human beings are different from nature. So that is what the network in the paper refers to as the narrow understanding of nature. So I borrowed this particular slide from Lena's slide. So this particular narrow understanding of nature refers to what is used in natural sciences, in engineering, economics, as well as in policy making. So we'll show in a while how this impacts particularly policy making, which is one of the implications of the paper we have shown you a while ago. The concept of the narrow understanding of nature also generally reflect Western dichotomies, again, as demonstrated or as showcased in literature. This particular dichotomies involve the natural and then the artificial, the nature as opposed to culture, and human as opposed to nature. Again, this seems to isolate human beings and their doings from the rest of the ecology, or from the rest of reality. So this narrow understanding of nature also seems to very narrowly captures non-human living beings in particular ecosystems, and it often focuses on a wildlife that exists independently from the whole ecosystem. So that particular westernization of the concept of culture is what I think what triggered or what provoked this particular project of the network, spearheaded by Lena and Orica and the other scholars. So this was shown by Lena a while ago. So it aims the title is exploring the diversity of conceptualizations of nature in East and Southeast Asia. So the aim of this again is to shed light on the diverse meaning of nature incorporated or maybe hidden in how East and Southeast Asian conceptualize it. So in particular, these conceptualizations of the idea of nature are in a sense limited to the network. So we operated on the conceptualizations of the culture from where the authors, the scholars in in the article you're seeing, from where they come from. So Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Filipino, Tagalog, Cebuano, Lumad, Indonesian, Burmese, Nepali, Khmer, and Mongolian. So fortunately, that is the composition of the network during the time that this article was being conceptualized. So this particular article shows the conceptual subtleties in the conceptualization of nature, often hidden in wider and deeper cosmological mismatches, which we hope to be able to show in a while. It also concludes that upon reviewing this particular conceptualizations in East and Southeast Asian culture and languages, we are able to highlight that there are certain mismatches and the diversity of these conceptualizations is present. However, despite this diversity, compared to the narrow understanding of nature from the Western concept, we highlight that the concept of nature is much wider, and it's much deeper than the Western idea. The concept of nature is translated, and what does it mean, and probably the cultural influences. So this is the synthesis of a panorama of conceptualizations. The way this was arranged was depending on the relationship with one another. So first, the first one, the Chinese and Japanese and Vietnamese were related to the sinosphere. So from Chinese, the discussion then went to Japanese, then to Vietnamese. And then the Mongolian language was presented next because of its geographical proximity to the sinosphere and its historical interactions as well with Tibetan Buddhists. And since Buddhism, since Mongolian is related historically to Tibetan Buddhism, then it opened the opportunity for the next languages, specifically Khmer, Indonesian, and Nepali, Burmese, Khmer. And after that, we move away and we focus on the archipelagos. Then we go to Indonesia, to Filipino. The Philippines has a lot of languages, regional languages, so we'll focus here on Filipino, Tagalog, Cebuano, and Lumad. And of course, in the last, we present Latin and Greek because of its relationship to Christianity, which is one of the influences of the Filipino culture there. So that is the how the discussion was presented. So some of the results and implications we presented the result of the study of the workshops that we had and of the paper showed a non-exhaustive panorama of some of the conceptualizations of concept of nature in East and Southeast Asia. We showcase here that on the one hand, the dichotomies that we have mentioned a while ago, the natural, artificial, the nature and the culture, and concept of human and nature, they remain in this particular concept. However, it's not that rigid compared to the narrow understanding of nature. So these dichotomies are also intertwined with the concept, the East and Southeast Asian concept. However, it's not limited to those dichotomies alone. So the network also found that there are connected in the conceptualization, there are also connections of the non-humans and their corresponding analogies, humans, non-humans, and their corresponding analogies. Some of the recurring theme rather that were found during the workshops and the writing of the paper there were certain themes, but then the themes showcase diversity. So for example, the concept of earth, of the origins and the existence of things, those were incorporated in the conceptualizations of nature. However, depending on the culture and the language, they differ depending on the culture and the language. So, for example, in Japanese, the origin and the existence of things demonstrate spontaneity. However, in Burmese, the existence of things demonstrate an as it is content. And then also we found that these conceptualizations also incorporate different belief of the concept of different worlds and the place of human beings within these different worlds, like the world of animals, for example, the world of the flora and the fauna, for example. So some of the languages such as Burmese and Nepali also demonstrate this varying worlds within the concept of nature. So it's clear then that the narrow understanding of nature excludes, again, the narrow understanding of nature is the Western concept. It excludes a multitude of things, such as, first and foremost, human beings, their doings, as well as its spiritual beings. It also, in a sense, reflects a hierarchical dualism that served to justify social power structures such as the mind and body dualism, spirit and matter, and even the man-woman dualism. Because of this, it's crucial or it's vital for the public or at least the scholars and policymakers it's vital for them to be aware of this particular nuances of the conceptualizations of nature, especially in the different worldviews, because they can also echo hierarchical social organizations as what we have seen in the narrow understanding or the Western conceptualization of nature. Hence, the conceptualizations in the conclusion, conceptualizations of nature in different worldviews are vital, again, because they can echo hierarchical social organizations, which would be vital for policymakers whenever they create policies and for scholars when they approach certain issues, especially since the concept of nature and the environment is one of the interesting topics that scholars wish to pursue nowadays. So it's also vital for us to be able to be aware of these nuances of the conceptualizations of nature. One of the implications, as well as demonstrated in the article, is that it's necessary for us to build an inclusive and mutual understanding around some concepts of nature and not just to impose the Western or the narrow understanding of nature, especially when we are engaging in high level environmental governance. So this is, I remember this was one of the key discussions that we had or the network had during the early phases of the workshop class in 2021. So the general understanding of nature needs to be interpreted and adopted to the local socio-cultural worldviews when applied in local context, because generally when we refer to policies and global policies and treatises, what happens is the Western or the narrow understanding of nature is what is being imposed. So again, it excludes a variety of things that is vital in local cultures. So it kind of misses certain essence of that culture. So it's very important for us to be able to incorporate this conceptualizations that we have demonstrated. Aside from the policy making, also in the process of knowledge making and decision making process, it's also vital to be able to incorporate this conceptualizations of nature because, well, in the Philippines, for example, when we refer to conceptualizations of nature, literature often refers to indigenous belief or the culture of the indigenous people and of local communities. However, this particular paper highlights that this should not only be the focus, but also the traditions of thought and the cultural approaches that is being set aside in order to accommodate the Western idea of nature, especially when we are referring to policymaking and knowledge making. So lastly, to cap off the presentation, to take into consideration the diversity of conceptualizations of nature can lead to better decisions about sustainability, because again, this is one of the research interests of various scholars nowadays, and improve the acceptability and efficiency of environmental policies in each local context, as well as in the international context. So that ends my very short presentation of the paper that the network has published in 2022. Thank you very much.